"Get this woman out of my lobby. People like her don't belong in five-star hotels." The shout cut through the marble hall like a crack of thunder. Conversations froze. Cups clinked once, then silence. Behind the front desk, Gregory Vance's face burned red, one hand jabbing toward a woman in cream. Calm, still, unmoved. She didn't flinch when the words hit her. She just looked at him measured, patient, dangerous in her quiet. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Aisha Carter. It was 9:07 on a Monday morning at the Grand Crest Hotel in Manhattan. The light from the chandelier spilled over polished floors, catching the edge of her black leather briefcase. She had walked in alone, no entourage, no announcement, just a quiet presence that somehow unsettled the room. Gregory leaned closer across the counter, voice dripping with authority. "Let me guess," he said. "Another fake reservation under a name you can't even spell." The receptionist beside him, Amy, gripped her radio tight. "Security, possible fraud at the front desk." Her voice trembled, but she pressed the button anyway. Two guests near the elevators stopped talking and raised their phones. Aisha spoke finally, voice low, even, unshaken. "Would you like to check the system before you call the police?" Gregory sneered. "The system doesn't make mistakes. People like you do." His words landed like slaps, one after another. Aisha's gaze didn't waver. Years of boardrooms, contracts, and quiet discrimination had taught her that silence could be sharper than any retort. The air grew thick, charged, waiting for something to break. And when Amy whispered, "They're on their way, sir," it did. Two security guards appeared within minutes, their footsteps echoing through the marble hall. The taller one adjusted his jacket, trying to look calm, but his eyes gave away hesitation. Gregory pointed toward Aisha like a man declaring victory. "Right there," he barked. "She is trying to check in under a stolen name. Remove her." The guards hesitated. Aisha did not. She turned slightly, her posture steady, her voice even. "Before you make that mistake," she said, "ask your manager to check the system again. My reservation is valid." Gregory slammed his hand on the counter. "We do not need to check anything. This is my hotel, and I decide who stays here." A few guests gasped. One whispered, "Did he really just say that?" Phones lifted higher. The air thickened. Every sound amplified the hum of the chandelier, the low murmur of disbelief, the quiet composure of a woman who had seen this scene before. Aisha reached for her phone and pressed a single button. "Nia," she said calmly, "begin internal audit protocol. Timestamp this moment and location." On the other end, a composed voice answered, "Confirmed, ma'am." The simple acknowledgement cut through the noise like a signal flare. Amy, still clutching her radio, blinked twice. "Internal audit?" she whispered to herself. Gregory's tone turned sharp, desperate. "You are bluffing. I have dealt with your type before." Aisha's eyes held his. "That is the problem. You think there is a type." The shorter guard shifted uneasily. He glanced at the computer screen behind the desk, where a reservation line flashed green. "Carter, Aisha, Executive Suite." He looked back at Gregory, uncertain. "Sir, it says she is confirmed." Gregory leaned over, his face draining of color. "That cannot be right. Reset the system." But before Amy could touch the keyboard, another voice entered. Elena Ruiz, the concierge, stepped forward from the side hallway. "That record is correct," she said firmly. "I checked it myself this morning." Gregory spun around. "Elena, stay out of this." She did not move. "Sir, she owns this property. Horizon Hospitality acquired Grand Crest last year." The room fell into complete silence. The guards lowered their radios. The crowd held their breath. Gregory's hand froze midair, still pointing but trembling now. Aisha finally spoke, her tone calm enough to command the entire room. "You called security on your employer. I will give you 1 minute to realize what that means." Gregory stepped back, the realization flooding his face. And for the first time that morning, the lobby felt quiet, not peaceful, but heavy with the sound of justice arriving. Gregory's mouth opened, but no words came. The color drained from his face as the weight of the moment pressed down. The guards slowly stepped back, no longer sure which side they stood on. Around them, guests whispered, phones still raised. A soft gasp came from the far corner where a child clutched her mother's sleeve. The mother whispered, "That woman owns this place." Aisha remained still, the calm center of a storm she did not create. Her voice, when it came, was low but carried across every marble wall. "For years, men like you have used policy as armor. Today, that armor cracks." She tapped her phone again. "Naya, proceed to phase 2. Confirmed, ma'am. Security feed and audio are now mirrored to the corporate board. Everything is being logged in real time." Gregory's knees seemed to weaken. "You cannot do this," he stammered. "You have no right." Aisha stepped closer, her presence quiet yet immense. "No right?" she said. "I built the rights you are standing under." Amy, the receptionist, looked between them, panic in her eyes. "Mr. Vance, she is serious. I can see the audit system activating." Gregory turned on her sharply. "Do not you dare take her side." But Amy's trembling voice betrayed her fear. "Sir, it is already done." She pointed at the monitor behind the desk where the Horizon Hospitality logo now filled the screen. A digital notification blinked. "Compliance breach recorded. Management review pending." Guests began murmuring louder. A man near the elevator said, "This is going viral already." Another added, "She handled this without raising her voice once." Gregory took a step forward as if to regain control, but Aisha's gaze froze him in place. "Stop," she said quietly. "Every word you speak from this point on becomes evidence." Elena moved closer to Aisha, her own voice shaking but steady. "Ma'am, should I contact the regional director?" "No need," Aisha replied. "They are watching." "Oh." Across the lobby, one of the guards removed his earpiece, whispering to his partner, "She really is the owner." The other nodded, eyes wide. Gregory's hands balled into fists. "You think this little display will save you from consequences?" Aisha tilted her head slightly. "The only consequences here are yours." She looked toward Amy. "Step aside, please." Amy moved immediately, leaving a clear path to the computer. Aisha walked behind the counter, her heels clicking softly, each step echoing authority. She entered her access code on the screen. The system recognized her instantly. A message appeared. "Welcome, Chief Executive Officer." The crowd gasped again. Even the guards seemed to straighten unconsciously, as if instinctively saluting power. Aisha turned back to Gregory. "You may submit your final statement for the record," she said evenly. "After that, your access to this property will be revoked." Gregory stared at her, speechless, surrounded by the proof of his own failure. The marble floors reflected his image small, shaking, and suddenly irrelevant. The room held its breath, waiting for what justice would sound like next. Gregory's lips trembled, but his pride would not let him bow. "You think you can embarrass me in front of my team?" he said, his voice cracking under the pressure. "You walk in here dressed like a guest and expect everyone to know who you are? That is not how business works." Aisha regarded him for a long moment. Her expression did not change. "You are right," she said softly. "This is not how business works. This is how arrogance collapses." The lobby seemed to shrink around them. The once luxurious chandelier light now felt harsh, exposing every face, every judgment. Guests were no longer silent. They whispered. They filmed. They stared. Someone said aloud, "He really called security on his own boss." Another murmured, "I hope the world sees this." Aisha raised her hand slightly, commanding quiet without needing to ask for it. "Mr. Vance," she said, each syllable deliberate, "you did not fail because you doubted my wealth. You failed because you doubted my worth." He swallowed hard but still tried to defend himself. "I was protecting the hotel's reputation." "By destroying it in public?" she asked. "You looked at me and made a decision that came from prejudice, not policy." Her tone was controlled, but the undercurrent was razor-sharp. "Tell me," she continued, "how many other guests have you judged before hearing their story?" Gregory looked down. The answer sat heavy between them. Behind Aisha, Elena stepped closer, voice steady. "Ma'am, the corporate board just confirmed receipt of the live feed. They have acknowledged your report." Aisha nodded once. "Thank you, Elena." The security guards stood by the door, uncertain, waiting. Aisha turned to them, her expression calm but resolute. "Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Vance to his office. He will collect his belongings and surrender his credentials." Gregory took a step back. You cannot just fire me like this. You are not being fired, Aisha replied. You are being released from access to dignity that you never understood. The guards hesitated, but when she looked at them, they moved. Gregory's protest turned to a whisper. This is wrong. Aisha's voice was quiet, almost kind. No. What was wrong happened 10 minutes ago when you shouted at me for existing in a space I own. The guards guided him toward the corridor. The crowd parted, phones still raised, recording every second. Amy stood frozen behind the desk, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Aisha turned to her. You still have a job, Amy, but from this moment on, you report to Elena. Amy nodded quickly, relief mixing with shame. As Gregory disappeared through the hallway, the lobby exhaled. Guests applauded softly, uncertain but moved. Aisha looked around, her voice returning to that steady rhythm that felt like truth itself. Every system has flaws, she said. But justice, real justice, has memory, and I do not forget. She turned back toward the main doors, the sunlight spilling across the marble floor as if following her. The day outside looked unchanged, but everyone inside knew something had shifted. Silence was no longer weakness, it was command. Outside the office door, Gregory's voice faded down the corridor, a distant echo swallowed by the hum of the lobby. The silence that followed was not empty, it was electric. Every person who had witnessed the scene stood frozen between awe and disbelief. The marble floor gleamed beneath the sunlight, but the air still carried the residue of something heavier truth exposed in real time. Aisha remained by the front desk. She did not rush. She simply inhaled once, slowly, then turned toward Elena. Please notify corporate human resources, she said. Effective immediately, this branch will undergo a full ethics audit. Yes, ma'am, Elena answered, already pulling up the form on her tablet. Amy wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, I am sorry, ma'am. I did not know who you were. Aisha's gaze softened slightly. You did not need to know who I was. You only needed to know what respect looks like. Amy lowered her eyes. I understand. Across the lobby, the guests began to lower their phones. Some were still filming discreetly, others pretending not to. The travel vlogger, Jason, approached hesitantly. Ma'am, he said, I want you to know the video is already spreading. People are saying it is the most powerful thing they have seen all year. Aisha nodded once. Let them see it. Maybe it will teach someone to pause before judging. Jason looked at her in quiet admiration. You never raised your voice. She met his gaze. I did not need to. Power does not shout. It decides. The elevator dinged softly from across the lobby. A group of new guests stepped out, unaware of what had unfolded moments before. The shift in atmosphere hit them immediately, the tension, the reverence, the eyes that still followed Aisha as she stood near the desk. One of the guests whispered, That is her, the owner. Aisha checked her phone. A message from Nia appeared. Corporate board confirms your actions. Media inquiry already inbound. She smiled faintly. So be it. Elena handed her a printed report summary for signature. It is official now, ma'am. Mr. Vance's credentials have been terminated. His name is flagged for review. Aisha signed without hesitation, her pen gliding smoothly. File it and send a copy to my office. I will address the staff personally this afternoon. Yes, ma'am. She looked back toward the main doors where sunlight poured in through tall glass panels. For a moment, she simply stood there, reflecting. She thought of her parents the nights they had worked double shifts cleaning hotels that never welcomed them through the front entrance. She remembered the promises she made to herself in those years, that if she ever owned a hotel, no one would be made to feel smaller within it. Her voice returned, low but firm. This lobby will remember today, she said. It will remember that silence can defend itself, and that dignity never needs permission. The guests stood still, unsure whether to applaud or simply breathe. Aisha closed her phone, straightened her jacket, and began walking toward the elevator. The marble echoed beneath her steps like a slow drumbeat of justice. The elevator doors opened with a quiet chime. Aisha stepped inside, her reflection multiplied across the mirrored walls. For a brief second, the silence felt endless. She pressed the button for the top floor, the executive level she rarely visited unannounced. As the elevator began to rise, her mind drifted not away from the moment, but through it. She remembered the first time she had walked into a hotel lobby as a child. Her mother had been wearing a housekeeping uniform, her father carrying a bucket of paint for night maintenance. When the manager walked by, he had smiled politely at them, but his eyes had never met theirs. That look had stayed with her, the look that measured worth by attire. Now, decades later, she had faced the same gaze, and this time it had bowed before her. The elevator doors opened again, revealing the grand corridor of the executive suite. Two assistants standing near the conference room froze in surprise. "Miss Carter," one of them said, "we were not expecting you." "I know," Aisha replied. "Sometimes accountability should arrive without notice." She walked toward the glass wall overlooking the city. The skyline stretched wide and gold beneath the morning Sunday. It looked peaceful, almost indifferent to the storm that had just passed below. She turned to her assistants. "Gather the department heads," she said. "We will have an internal meeting at 1 o'clock. Today we speak about what respect means inside this company." "Yes, ma'am." A knock sounded at the door. Elena stepped in, holding a folder. "Ma'am, the regional director is on video call, waiting for confirmation that the audit has begun. Tell him it started the moment I was told I did not belong," Aisha said. Elena smiled faintly. "Yes, ma'am." Aisha took the folder, scanning the summary. Gregory's employment termination, Amy's reassignment, the pending diversity review, all moving fast, all documented. She signed each page carefully. "Send copies to Nia for archiving. No edits, no filters. The footage from the lobby stays exactly as it happened." "Yes, ma'am. Understood." When Elena left, Aisha stood alone again. The city shimmered below her, alive, restless. She whispered almost to herself, "Every empire forgets how it treats its workers until someone reminds it." Her phone buzzed with a message from Nia. News outlets have picked up the story. The headline reads, "Black CEO humiliated in her own hotel. Responds with grace and power." Aisha read it once, then set the phone down. "Let them write what they will," she said softly. "What matters is what they learn." She glanced once more at the skyline. In the glass, her reflection stood tall, calm, composed, and unyielding. The same woman who had been dismissed minutes ago now looked like what she had always been, the embodiment of poise, the definition of earned power. The clock on the wall struck 10. She turned toward the door, ready for the next meeting, ready to rebuild the space she had just reclaimed. The storm had cleared, but its lesson remained in the air like perfume, faint, powerful, unforgettable. At precisely 1 o'clock, the boardroom lights dimmed to a steady glow. The long glass table reflected the city skyline behind Aisha, who stood at its head. Department heads filled the seats one by one, their faces a mix of anxiety and curiosity. No one spoke. They all knew what had happened that morning. The video had already reached every inbox in the company. Aisha looked at them without notes, without a script. "Before we begin," she said, "I want you to watch something." She tapped her phone, and the wall screen flickered to life. The footage from the lobby played in silence. Gregory shouting, the security guards moving in, the humiliation, the revelation, the quiet justice. Gasps rippled across the room. Some lowered their eyes, others could not look away. When the video ended, Aisha let the silence stretch. Then she spoke. "That happened in one of our hotels. Not in a stranger's business, not in a competitor's building, in ours. A place that was built to represent dignity, excellence, and equality." Her voice did not rise, but it carried the weight of a verdict. What happened downstairs was not an isolated failure. It was a mirror. It reflected everything we ignore when we confuse politeness with respect, and policy with decency. She walked slowly around the table. The man you just saw believed he was protecting the brand, but what he was protecting was bias, and that bias cost him his career and almost cost this company its soul. "Oh." The head of guest relations cleared her throat nervously. "Miss Carter, none of us knew it was that bad." Aisha stopped beside her. "That is the problem. If you need to see it on a screen to believe it, then you have not been listening to your staff, your guests, or your conscience." No one replied. The air was thick with shame and realization. She turned back toward the windows. "Starting today, every manager, every concierge, and every intern will complete new training, not about hospitality, but about humanity. We will rebuild this company from the inside out, and every name that was silenced will be heard." Her assistant, standing near the door, handed her a folder. Aisha flipped through the pages, then signed the top document with deliberate calm. "This is the new code of conduct. I expect it to be on every wall of every property by Friday." "Oh." She looked around the room, meeting each gaze. We built this brand to change the standard. If we cannot live that standard, then the name Horizon means nothing. A murmur of agreement followed, quiet but sincere. Aisha placed the pen down, her tone softening. What happened today will not be forgotten, and it should not be, because sometimes it takes a single act of injustice to remind an empire what justice sounds like. No one clapped. They simply stood, understanding that the meeting was not just about policy, it was about transformation. And at the center of it all, Aisha Carter remained unmoved, a living reminder that dignity, once reclaimed, becomes a force no one can silence again. When the meeting ended, the executives left the room in silence, their footsteps soft against the carpet. The tension lingered like smoke. Aisha stayed behind, staring out over the city that glittered beneath the afternoon Sunday. The skyline looked serene, but she knew serenity was never the same as justice. Justice required discomfort. It demanded exposure. Her phone buzzed once more. A message from Nia appeared. Press requests have tripled. News outlets are asking for your statement. Do you want me to draft one? Aisha typed back, no draft. I will speak for myself. She turned and walked down the hallway toward the public media lounge, a glass-walled space where company representatives usually handled interviews. Several communications staff members were already gathered there, whispering nervously. When they saw her, they straightened immediately. Miss Carter, CNN, and The Times are both requesting a live comment, one said. They are calling it an example of real-time corporate accountability. Aisha paused, considering. Schedule it for tomorrow morning. But I want the message to be clear. This is not about me firing anyone. It is about what silence can achieve when it refuses to break. Who? Yes, ma'am, the staffer replied. Aisha nodded and began walking again, this time toward the lobby. She wanted to see it, to feel it after the storm. As the elevator descended, her reflection stared back at her steady eyes, composed face, a quiet storm contained in elegance. When the doors opened, the lobby was calmer but changed. The same guests from earlier were still there, some checking out, others lingering deliberately, hoping for another glimpse of her. Conversations hushed as she stepped out. The front desk staff now stood aligned, posture straight, eyes respectful but not fearful. Elena waited near the center, holding a clipboard. Status? Aisha asked. All guests have been accommodated. Mr. Vance's belongings have been retrieved from his office. He left the premises 30 minutes ago. Aisha nodded. Good. Has corporate sent a statement to the internal team? Yes, ma'am. It confirms the incident, the corrective actions, and a renewed commitment to equal service across all branches. Excellent, she said. Then let us make sure those words mean something beyond this lobby. Jason, the travel vlogger who had captured the video, approached cautiously. Miss Carter, I wanted to thank you. People are saying your response gave them hope. They are calling it the 9-minute revolution. Aisha allowed herself a small smile. Hope is good, but change is better. Make sure your followers understand that difference. He nodded, visibly moved. Yes, ma'am, they will. As he stepped back, Aisha glanced around the space once more. The same marble floor that had echoed prejudice now felt transformed, a place reborn in accountability. She turned to Elena. Replace that lobby slogan, she said. It currently reads luxury through tradition. Change it to luxury through respect. Elena smiled. Right away, ma'am. The sunlight had begun to fade, stretching across the floor in long gold lines. Aisha looked up at the grand chandelier. It no longer symbolized privilege, it reflected her resolve. She whispered under her breath, let the light fall on everyone equally. And with that, she walked toward the doors again, ready to face the world that had finally started to listen. The following morning broke clear and bright, sunlight spilling across the glass facade of the Grand Crest Hotel. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Cameramen adjusted tripods while reporters rehearsed opening lines. The video from the lobby had reached every major platform overnight. Hashtags filled the screens, number The Quiet CEO, number 9-Minute Revolution, number Dignity Has No Dress Code. Inside, the air was calmer but charged with anticipation. The staff moved with careful precision, aware that the eyes of the world were now on them. Elena stood near the reception desk, ensuring every detail was immaculate. The new sign above the counter read exactly as Aisha had ordered, luxury through respect. At 9 o'clock sharp, Aisha stepped out of the elevator. She wore a dark navy suit, minimal jewelry, and a quiet determination that seemed to command the room before she even spoke. The lobby fell silent. Cameras turned instantly, lights blinking to life. CNN's lead correspondent, a woman with auburn hair and a steady voice, approached with a microphone. "Miss Carter, thank you for agreeing to speak with us. The world watched what happened here yesterday. Many are calling it a defining moment for racial equality in corporate America. What do you want people to understand about it?" Aisha met the reporter's gaze, her tone calm and deliberate. "I want them to understand that dignity should never depend on recognition. It should never depend on color, clothing, or assumption. What happened yesterday was not an act of power, it was an act of clarity. I did not raise my voice because I did not need to. The truth was loud enough." The reporter nodded, visibly moved. "There are those who say your reaction sets a new precedent for leadership under pressure. How do you respond to that?" "I do not lead to set precedents," Aisha said. "I lead to set standards. We cannot talk about equality in boardrooms while ignoring bias in our lobbies. Change begins where the insult happens, not where the cameras arrive." The cameras flashed. A murmur of approval spread through the small crowd of journalists. Another reporter spoke up. "Do you plan to take legal action against the former manager?" Aisha shook her head. "No, firing him was not about revenge. It was about responsibility. He represented a mindset that no longer fits inside the walls of this company. Sometimes, removing one voice of prejudice gives room for hundreds of voices of progress." The sound of typing filled the air as journalists recorded every word. Aisha continued, her tone steady but passionate. "There is a lesson here for everyone who has ever been told they do not belong. You do not have to scream to be heard. You do not have to fight to prove your worth. Sometimes, the most powerful answer is calm certainty. That is what silence can do when it stands for truth." Applause rippled softly through the lobby. The cameras caught her final glance toward the chandelier overhead. "Let this place be known," she said. "Not for the mistake that happened, but for the moment we chose to correct it." As the crowd stepped back and the interviews ended, the sunlight poured through the windows, catching the polished marble in a way that seemed symbolic proof that even the coldest stone could reflect light once it was cleaned by truth. By noon, the Horizon Group's phone lines were flooded. Clients called to praise her response. Journalists requested interviews, and hundreds of employees sent messages saying they had never felt prouder to wear the company badge. For the first time in years, Horizon felt united not by profit but by principle. Aisha sat by her window, sunlight reflecting off the towers below. Her assistant, Nia, entered holding a tablet. "Ma'am, the internal message you approved, 'Respect is our lobby,' has gone viral. Staff across all branches are posting it with pride." Aisha allowed herself a small smile. "Then maybe we are finally becoming what we were meant to be." Nia hesitated. "There is something else, mister. Vance has asked to meet you. He says he wants to apologize in person." Aisha's gaze did not soften. "Apology or justification?" "He said he needs to face you. The board left the decision to you." After a pause, Aisha replied, "Schedule it. Tomorrow morning. Let him see that the place he tried to disgrace now stands stronger than ever." When Nia left, Aisha turned toward the window again. The city moved below her like an endless rhythm taxis, people, stories colliding. She remembered her parents, their tired hands cleaning hotels that never saw them as guests. Every generation faced a moment where silence meant surrender or strength. She had chosen strength. Her phone buzzed once more. A message from Elena read, "Guests keep asking to meet you. They say they have never seen leadership handled with such calm power." Aisha replied, "Dignity spreads faster than outrage. Let us protect it." She stood, crossing the room to an old framed photo on the wall, the first Horizon staff, men and women of every color, smiling with pride. Beneath it read, "Hospitality begins with humanity." Aisha traced the words with her fingertip. Time we remembered that. Her reflection in the glass looked composed yet fierce. She whispered, "They tried to remove me from a lobby. Instead, I rebuilt the meaning of it." Oh. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, and for a moment the whole skyline seemed to gleam in agreement. The next morning arrived calm and bright, the kind of light that made the glass towers shimmer like they were newly built. Aisha stepped into the lobby just as the staff gathered quietly behind the reception desk. Everything was spotless. The new sign, luxury through respect, gleamed in gold letters. For the first time since the incident, the air felt clean. Elena approached her softly. "Ma'am, Mr. Vance has arrived. He is waiting in the meeting lounge." Aisha nodded once. "Thank you, Elena. Let him wait 5 minutes." She walked across the marble floor, her heels measured and steady. Guests turned to watch, whispering as she passed. Every movement carried authority, but there was no triumph in her face, only focus. When she entered the lounge, Gregory stood by the window, hat in hand, suit wrinkled, a man unrecognizable from the one who had shouted just days before. He turned immediately, voice trembling. "Miss Carter, I came here today to say I was wrong. I judged you without reason, without respect. I do not expect forgiveness, but I needed to face you." Aisha studied him quietly. "You do not owe me words, Mr. Vance. You owe them to the people you misrepresented, the guests, the staff, and every person who has been told they do not belong." He nodded, shame filling every syllable. "I understand that now." She took a step closer. "Do you? Because understanding means change. Tell me what you learned." Gregory swallowed hard. "That prejudice does not always look angry. Sometimes it looks like certainty. I was certain I was right, and I was not." Aisha's expression softened, but only slightly. "Then you have learned something worth keeping. But the damage you caused will not disappear with an apology. You must decide what you will build instead." He lowered his head. Day after Gregory's departure, the Horizon headquarters felt different. The energy inside the building was lighter, sharper, as if the entire company had taken a breath it did not know it was holding. Staff members greeted one another more warmly. Conversations sounded cleaner, free of hesitation. Something invisible had shifted the tone of leadership itself. Aisha arrived just after 8 o'clock, walking through the glass atrium where employees had gathered unexpectedly. When she entered, the sound of soft applause rippled through the air. No one had planned it. It simply happened, an instinctive gesture of respect. She raised a hand gently, signaling for quiet. "Thank you," she said, her voice low and grounded. "But remember, this moment is not about me. It is about what we stand for when no one is watching." A young employee near the back spoke up, her voice nervous but sincere. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, I watched the video with my family. My little brother said he wants to work here someday because he wants to be like you, calm but unstoppable." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, touched by the simplicity of that statement. Aisha smiled softly. "Then we have done something right. Tell him that strength is not loud. It is consistent." She continued walking toward her office, passing familiar faces, engineers, custodians, accountants, chefs from the hotel kitchens who had come to headquarters just to meet her. Every person she passed nodded with quiet gratitude. Inside her office, Nia was waiting with the morning report. "Ma'am, the story has reached over 60 million views. Social platforms are flooded with people sharing their own experiences of discrimination. They are calling it the Horizon effect." Aisha sat down at her desk, considering the words carefully. "The Horizon effect," she repeated. "Let us make sure that means more than a headline. Start an initiative. I want scholarship programs for hospitality students from underrepresented communities. I want leadership training for employees who never saw themselves as management material. If this story gave us a spotlight, then let us use it to light paths for others." Nia smiled. "Already in motion, ma'am. I will coordinate with the foundation team." Aisha nodded, her gaze turning toward the window where sunlight streamed across the skyline. "Good. We cannot control what people think of us, but we can control what we build next." Later that afternoon, she walked through the Grand Crest Hotel once more. Guests smiled as she passed. The new staff uniforms carried a small, stitched phrase above the pocket, "Respect lives here." At the reception desk, Elena greeted her with quiet pride. "It feels different now," she said. Aisha looked around. "It should. Places remember the people who change them." She paused, then added softly, "And they remember who chose silence for strength instead of noise for control." As she turned to leave, Elena said, "Ma'am, if I may, what will you do next?" Aisha smiled faintly. "What I have always done. Build something that cannot be torn down by prejudice." "Oh." And with that, she walked toward the exit, her reflection trailing behind her across the marble floor, steady, purposeful, untouchable. The quiet revolution she had started was no longer confined to a single lobby. It was echoing far beyond the glass doors into boardrooms, classrooms, and hearts across the world. I will find a way to make it right. Then begin there, she said. Do better wherever you go next. Gregory looked up, eyes glistening. Thank you for letting me speak. Oh. Aisha nodded once. Leave with dignity. It is all any of us truly own. He turned and left the room, shoulders heavy, footsteps fading into the distance. Aisha remained still for a long moment. Then she exhaled slowly, whispering to herself, Justice is not revenge, it is repair. Outside, sunlight poured through the tall windows, and the world kept moving, unaware that in one quiet room, two people had finally learned what power truly meant. That evening, long after the city lights began to shimmer across the skyline, Aisha returned to the lobby one final time. The hotel was calm now, almost serene. The air held that rare balance between stillness and renewal, like a place finally breathing again after a long silence. She walked slowly across the marble floor, each step echoing softly beneath the chandelier that once illuminated humiliation but now reflected victory. Elena stood near the desk, ready to close the shift. Ma'am, she said quietly, the team wanted me to thank you. They said today felt like the first real day of Horizon. Aisha smiled gently. It is only the first of many. The goal was never revenge, it was restoration. She turned toward the glass doors. Outside, the streetlights glowed against the night. Her reflection looked back at her, stronger, calmer, unshakable. I have learned, she said softly, that justice does not need to announce itself. It only needs to stand its ground. Isn't? Elena nodded, emotion glinting in her eyes. The world is watching you now, Miss Carter. Then let them, Aisha replied. Because if one story can remind people that dignity is power, then it was worth every second. She walked out into the night air, the city humming around her, alive and awake. Somewhere in the distance, the sign above the grand crest glowed brighter than before, its letters clear, its message undeniable. Luxury through respect. And as Aisha disappeared into the rhythm of the city, her words lingered like a closing line written for history itself. I do not need to film justice. I am the result of it.